Welcome to this demo. We will show you how to use eryph to build virtual machines in such a new way that they deserve a new name, catlets. In the Catlet wizard, you can search for parent catlets in the eryph gene pool, which is our gallery of building blocks for your virtual machines. Catlets can be very large. Some require several gigabytes to be downloaded, especially Windows desktop catlets. Therefore, for your first experiments, you should choose a Linux or server OS.
Let's take Ubuntu for this demo.
Next selection is the tag of the gene set. A tag identifies a version or variant of the catlet. Starter tags are ideal for your first experiments as they contain default users with known passwords. As you can see in the gene set documentation, the default username and password for Linux are both admin. Let us remember this. The parent configuration will now be resolved from the gene pool, which may take a moment. Afterwards, you will need to provide a name for the catlet before you can review the generated YAML specification. We will talk about the specification later, but for now, let's just deploy the catlet. Deploy just opens a PowerShell window in which the catlet configuration is passed to the new catlet command. eryph is command line first, so everything you can do in the eryph app also has a corresponding PowerShell command. During deployment, all the necessary parts of the catlet, called genes, will be downloaded from the gene pool at least once. As we have not configured any additional settings, it will only have to download the volumes and configuration of the parent catlet. Catlets can also reference other types of genes, such as fodder, which contains just configuration, and we will later see how to define inline fodder in catlets. Once the catlet has been deployed, you can start it and log in. In order to do so, you will need to know the catlet's IP address. Each catlet has a virtual IP address managed by eryph. By default, the virtual IP address is only accessible from the host, but this can be changed if necessary. First, let's look up the IP address, then log in with the admin account via SSH. We will then need to confirm the SSH security prompts and enter the password admin. Alright, we've successfully logged in. Now, let's do something with it. First, just redeploy the catlet and see how quickly it rebuilds from scratch. Fast rebuilding is one of the key advantages of eryph, as it allows you to build VMs repeatedly until everything works, just like building software. As you saw, redeployment took only seconds. So let's start it again and log in. While we're logging in, let's think about what we would like to do with the catlet. What if we could install a complete Kubernetes environment with just one command? This can be achieved by adding configuration alongside the VM settings in the catlet specification. To do this, we first need to learn how to set up Kubernetes on Ubuntu. So let's take a look at the Ubuntu documentation to find out how to install it. As you can see, we need just two commands. Let us first try to run the snap installation and see if it works. Okay, that worked perfectly. Now let's run the second command to bootstrap the Kubernetes cluster. What we have done here is actually the recommended workflow. We recommend running the commands manually first, so you can learn how they work and what can go wrong. You can then automate them by adding the commands to the catlet specification. The catlet specification defines how the virtual machine should be configured, as well as which configuration settings should be applied. This concept is known as VM as code, or infrastructure as code. The configuration in eryph is called fodder because it is fed into the catlet when the catlet boots up. This can be defined in the catlet specification via Cloud Init settings. The catlet editor supports IntelliSense for Cloud Init settings, but you can also Google most commands. Okay, now it is perfect. Let's redeploy again. We can use the Cloud Init status command to check if the Cloud Init configuration has completed. Yes, it is still ongoing. Let's give the system a moment to install Kubernetes. Okay, that's it. Just a single deployment and everything is done automatically. So finally, let's save the catlet config in a more reusable form. We will now copy the catlet specification from the eryph app to Visual Studio Code. Of course, you can use any other editor or just the Windows Explorer, but Visual Studio Code is probably the most widely used editor these days. You can also deploy the catlet directly from the Visual Studio Code terminal. However, by default, eryph requires admin credentials to run commands. To avoid this, let's create a dedicated client for accessing eryph without administrator credentials. Let's redeploy again. Okay, it still fails, but now with another error. The reason for this is that the new client can no longer access the default project in eryph. So let's add a project owned by this client. In eryph, projects are used to provide isolated environments. Catlets cannot see or access those defined in other projects, and networks are separated too. Access rules and member assignment allow you to control which clients can access each project. Now, deployment works. Now we have a reusable configuration to deploy a full Kubernetes cluster with a single command. We also have many more examples and a full tutorial on using eryph on www.eryph.io. Hope you enjoyed this demo and have fun breeding catlets.